Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast. Introducing your host for this evening first. He is the host with the most from the West Coast, the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg. And his partner, he has colonized, energized, and revolutionized the podcasting wrestling world today. Your Colonial Champion, Shorty.
Now, I heard that there was a good show going on last week, yeah, and it was called the National Wrestling League, and it had a hell of a production, yeah, but only one man can stand to top a show out of the West Coast as dainty and as well executed as the National Wrestling League. That's right, it's Atlantic Coast Pro Wrestling, yeah, and we're gonna give you the best show you've ever seen that has nothing happening on it. Welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast. I am your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, doing a half-baked Macho Man Randy Savage impression to kick off a show in an unorthodox way, surprising you all by the fact that I am here. But I couldn't possibly be here alone because someone has got to groan at Katie Forbes shaking her ass, and that one man is the man of the hour, the man of the power, too sweet to be sour. He is the Bay Area Brawler himself, Skylar Greenberg. How you doing in that fish tank, buddy?
Well, let me tell you something, brother. I think you have a great show coming up because while the National Wrestling League put out the best show of its time, I know there is one man who has the power and can do the things that you can do. And I believe in you, brother. Let's see. Sean Mania's running wild on you.
Ooh, yeah. That's right. We're having a good old time. And thankfully, the Hulk Hogan promo will never get as tired and useless as the man himself.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Oh boy, and Chris Jericho's so fat that when Hogan was talking about the 36-inch pythons, he thought he was talking about the Subway sandwich he was going to eat later that day.
Oh, okay, hold on. Before we get on to the Chris Jericho joke, which is good, we have some news of the week that we need to break down. Are you ready?
We've got a lot of news of the week, but you can't do it without an intro. Roll it.
Coming straight to you from the Golden Gate Garage, this is the Wrestle News with Skylar Green.
That is right, folks. It is the news of the week with the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg, at your service. And we're going to talk about probably the biggest thing that's happened, the Dark Side of the Ring episode that premiered on Vice last week involving the plane ride from hell. Narrated by one fat man, Chris Jericho himself.
That's right. You know, I didn't even think of that being as applicable a transition as it really was. But boy, was it! I'm a little surprised that Jericho wasn't in. That Jericho wasn't interviewed for this.
Here's the thing, though, is that I could not take him being the narrator. His voice sucked. He sounded so dopey while he was talking about the events.
Jericho was the least of my issues with that show. That's the way I'll put that. But I don't disagree with you, though, on his delivery.
But this episode has been highly anticipated because the plane ride from hell is probably one of the most legendary scandals in the history of WWE.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard anything as compelling as the events that happened on the plane ride from hell, Sean?
Well, you see, it's funny because there were a few things that I had heard through either shoots or accounts from various people about what actually took place on the plane ride from hell, and it turns out that those particular incidents that I thought were on that plane were on different planes. Not necessarily from hell, but from maybe various circles leading up to, you know, the first 6 or so circles of hell, rather than that penultimate 7th that was this Dark Side of the Ring episode. So there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know was going on this plane ride from hell. And there were things I thought happened on this plane ride that did not happen on this plane ride. But boy, a lot happened on this plane ride, didn't it?
Yeah, and there's just something about being locked in a flying metal cage and being stuck for hours on end, just waiting to get to a destination that makes wrestlers and generally people just go crazy.
Well, let me ask you this. If, let's say that this was just, I don't want to call it a commercial flight, but let's say that it was a more commercial flight and this was just not wrestlers and the general public, and you're stuck on the tarmac for 7 hours. Would you not also want to go through a hefty amount of alcohol waiting to get up on the plane? I'm not trying to justify it, but I don't necessarily blame the idea of drinking waiting for it to go up, but 3 carts is a lot.
Well, yes, but I think if it was on a commercial flight, the wrestlers would not have gone as crazy because they would have had to behave themselves. This was a private plane that they got for themselves, and they just went crazy.
Yeah.
So let's go into each of the different stories that were touched, from the least severe to the most severe. Let's actually talk about the one that was the funniest to me.
Is that Kurt Hennig?
That has to be X. No. Let's go to X-Pac cutting off Michael. Yes. X-Pac cutting off Michael Hayes' ponytail.
Yeah, that one was really funny. But you know what? It's when I heard that story, just judging from all the click things I've heard from Nash and Hall and all these people, if I were Michael Hayes, the first person I would suspect is Kid. He would have been the guy, like, honestly, suspect number 1 on my list. If I had my ponytail cut off back when I had long hair and I didn't know who did it, he would have been the first person I would have gone to find out who it was. But,
and honestly, if I was given the opportunity to, I would probably do the same thing because Michael PSH probably deserves it.
He's an interesting cat. And I mean, again, it was, like you said, it was probably one of the most innocent of the ribs, but Hayes cares very much about his hair. That's why he still has it, even at, God, how old is Michael Hayes?
He's in his 50s, going to his 60s.
Yeah, I was going to say probably late 50s, yeah. Someone tell his face. The way it's going to work is
that, yeah, true. Anyways, we're going to scale up from the innocent stories to the more severe stories.
Yes.
The Brock Lesnar and Kurt Hennig rib led to a fight on the plane.
Now, I personally think that the worst thing about this was just the fact that they pushed, they almost busted through the side of the plane. Right? That's the worst part. I think the rib itself from Kurt is hysterically funny. Of getting the shaving cream and putting the shaving cream on Brock's head and just like rubbing up his hands and going, wham! Just seeing the shaving cream just fly everywhere. That would crack me up. The fight, though, that could have been done without.
Yeah, like the fighting part, once they started brawling and the danger of fighting on a plane and going for the plane side and killing everyone in the plane.
Yeah.
That's when it started,
It escalated. It definitely went further than it should have.
And do you think it was deserved that Kurt Hennig got fired?
I suspect that Kurt had done a lot of ribs up to that point that had just bothered Vince, and that was more of a straw that broke the camel's back rather than that specific incident was the problem.
Right, but he was messing with the golden goose at the time.
Yeah, and it was Brock, and everybody did love Brock. I mean, I understand it. I'm not going to say it was wrong to fire Kurt. Somebody had to take the heat for it, and it wasn't going to be Brock Lesnar, I'll tell you that much.
Because of all the people involved, Brock Lesnar was the one that was the least troublesome.
And that's minus flashing Terry.
Yeah,
theoretically.
That part was, I didn't know that. Like, now that I think about it, that's not surprising. And we'll get to that topic later in a bit.
Yeah, we sure will.
But yeah, and speaking of Terry, that's a great transition.
Yep.
All the stuff that was happening with Goldust around this time.
Yeah, it was a dark time for Dustin. 2002 and further, thankfully Dustin kind of fixed things a little bit as he went, into the mid 2000s, and then we got to see Booker T and Goldust, which is like one of my favorite ruthless aggression mosh together tag teams. We got to see a little bit more Goldust before he went on his black reign.
Which is weird.
Which is weird and just not a good place for Dustin. But now he's obviously much better. But then hearing, him serenading on the plane because his heart was broken because he and Terry were getting a divorce, or had already been divorced. I don't know what the exact timeline of that was, but
they were divorcing, and he was feeling sad about it. So he tried to sing "The Winner Are Back" over the airplane's PA system, which is
until JR was finally like, "All right, bud, stop, sit the fuck down."
Which, by the way, Terry, she is the second person that I feel the most bad for, because that line about "don't sell it" can apply to so many women, not just in entertainment, but around the world. Involved in these situations.
It's just wrestling has a very interesting way of phrasing it, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I genuinely think that no selling it was a way that a lot of the people in the business were taught to when people were messing with you. Don't sell it. That's what you're kind of taught. If somebody's messing with you, don't sell, don't get pissed or blah, 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 because that doesn't help anything. And that was, I think, taught in the business. And Terry kind of touched on that too. No matter what it was, don't sell it. Which is not healthy. It's sad that you even have to be
in a situation like that at all.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that entertainment reflects society in general, and pro wrestling, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And speaking of, we're going to get harder with the Scott Hall ODing situation.
Well,
now here's the thing. Were you watching Raw at this time?
This was what, May of 2002?
Yeah, the Insurrection pay-per-view that happened in the United Kingdom.
I remember watching the Insurrection pay-per-view like long after and not really liking it. I didn't think it was that good. That's all I remember of it. I mean, I wasn't really actively watching at the time because I was still kind of young, so I was, I wasn't as in tuned with what was happening on the show until like late 2002 going into 2007 or 8 probably was where my beginnings were.
Same, like my time period after the invasion angle was a little bit fuzzy, but I remember watching Scott Hall and he was fine at the beginning, but then as he kept going on, he was bad. Like he should not have been wrestling.
Yeah, and Scott, although I do have to say he has arguably one of the most realistic looking sells of the Stone Cold Stunner on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. The stunner that he does is fantastic, but
I agree entirely. I mean, you look at his work in TNA in 2002 after this incident, and really going forward with TNA beyond that, when he did like the Kings of Wrestling thing where he came out as an Elvis with Kevin Nash. And it was just, the more and more you saw him, the more and more you saw the demons starting to take a hold of him more and more. Kind of like what happened to Jake Roberts, a la the Heroes of Wrestling pay-per-view and more.
Yeah, and it's just sad that the drug use in WWE specifically, like, it's been talked about legendarily by people in and around wrestling. And it was never fading in the territories. I mean, sure, there were guys who used drugs in the territories, but never to the extreme that they did in WWF.
There was a specific culture around WWF and pills that was unique to itself. And especially with fucking with people. And I think that was probably the most jarring part of this whole documentary was when Van Dam was just so blasé. He was like, yeah, so, there would be people who would have halcyon and put it in ladies' drinks and
people
have their way with them. And it was like, Jesus, Rob, and Rob's not one to mince words at all. That's not his thing. He's very curt. He's to the point, but he's in that kind of zen where his attitude doesn't fluctuate really. So it was just like, it was unsettling to hear that. And then just to have it be implied. And maybe, who knows what the culture of wrestling in WWE at that time was like. But clearly not healthy for anyone.
Right. And speaking of unhealthy, we have to go to the serious one, and the thing that this episode was really centered around, this flight attendant and the Ric Flair incident.
Yep. Well,
and apparently it exposed a culture in wrestling of exposing yourself to other people as a joke or as a rib. And I've never heard of this type of behavior before, and I really do not like it.
It's stupid. It's something that, unfortunately, I don't mean to speak this like it's a traumatic event, because it's not. It's just like just kind of putting a tone of personal note onto this. When I was in college, me and the boys were just chilling in the, my freshman year in the dorm, like playing games one day, and this kid drunk just busts in and does exactly what Flair did. He just busts in and helicopter dicks, and we're like, dude, Keith, put that away, bro. Like, it's like, no, I mean, a couple guys were laughing. He was laughing. I was like, dude, just put that away. It's like I don't know where that's been. And so this is not something that is unique, unfortunately. This is something that people do. And why is beyond me. I don't know what it's supposed to prove. It's jock postulating. It's dick fear. I have to have a bigger dick than your dick. That's like, it's this weird penis envy that guys have insecurities about all the time. And I think knowing Ric Flair and knowing the kind of insecurities he had, and the fact that Rick was probably just going around showboating because he's Ric Flair, that's probably how that was perceived. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's dumb. But that's where that comes from.
Right. Also, here's another thing. It's just like, at this time with wrestling, Ric Flair is 50 years old, okay? This is not prime Ric Flair. He shouldn't be doing these types of things, but he does it anyways. And we all know about the sexual escapades of Ric Flair. Like, I think everyone knows that.
Yeah.
It's just like, Rick has to know at some point he can't do these things. And obviously alcohol played a part in this, and maybe he was filled up too, which probably made things worse. But honestly, this is one of those things with Ric Flair that you had to know it's something he could have done, and he did. And
it's too much in line with Ric Flair. And for those of you who haven't watched this Plane Ride from Hell documentary, it's on YouTube. I mean, please do watch it. I think it is incredible, just to get the perspective. And also, you need to see the eyes of this flight attendant as she's telling this story. Because when you look in your eyes, you can 100% tell that she is not bullshitting this story.
Right. And the trauma that she was inflicted with, she has PTSD. That's very clear as day.
Yeah.
And
it's obvious.
You can see it in her eyes how much this has affected her.
Yeah.
And many people got in trouble for this at the time. Ric Flair got off scot-free.
Yep.
Because as JR said, he was the man and he's untouchable.
He gets a pass. Yeah, but I also have to say, of anyone talking about this Ric Flair incident on that program, JR was easily the best. Because he was like, why didn't he get punished? That's a good question. Should he have? I'm going to leave that up to the viewer. It was just a perfect way to do it. And, and poor JR, this fucking guy puts it.
What is Vince McMahon expecting JR to do with all these wrestlers? Because JR, as good as he is, can't watch over, and JR even said it himself, I can't watch over 100 to 150 talents. Great. At some point, they have to be responsible for themselves.
Yeah. He can't be the babysitter for 60 man children who are hammered. It's hard. And why is it that every time that Ric Flair gets into shenanigans or trouble, JR's always the one who pays for it? Between here and the Access show, I mean...
Because JR is the whipping boy.
I know. It's amazing he stayed there for so long.
Well, he was useful until he wasn't. Also, Vince McMahon is one of the shittiest bosses ever. Why couldn't he go back there and control things? Because they would not do any of it if Vince McMahon was involved.
It's another good question. But here's my here's my thing about this. I don't buy for a second that Vince McMahon wasn't incapacitated in his own right, but those stories just didn't have the people to tell those stories. I'm not so sure that Vince was, just Mr. Boss and had his composure, blah, 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 and just told JR to handle it. I'm not sold on that quite really. Knowing the stories we've heard about Vince McMahon.
So you're thinking we should have asked where Vince McMahon was during this plane ride?
I think there's more to Vince McMahon's side of this story than we'll probably ever know, or what he was properly doing while this was going on. Because if it was bad enough, Vince would have done something. He would have stepped in. I have to imagine. He wouldn't have just...
Which, by the way, that's something that we have said about Vince McMahon for a long time. And the Jimmy Snuka stuff, and the plane ride from hell, and all the incidents involving kayfabe and the steroid scandal. Where is Vince McMahon on this? Well, he knows something, but we're never going to find out. No wonder.
That's the classic promoter.
No wonder Bruno Sammartino did not want to be involved with WWF at all.
Yeah, I mean, it took until they really cleaned things up, in a lot of ways. I mean, I think his gripe was more garbage wrestling than anything else. I don't think it really was as much with Vince and Jay, although the issues between him and Vince and Jay are well documented.
Well, the issue for Bruno was two things. One, the garbage wrestling, and two, the backstage area and the people that were in the locker room and the bad influences, which were plenty during this time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, in abundance, almost doubly so, because then, this was when they had that jacked up, inflated roster that they just brand split for.
Right.
So they had also a ton of people on that roster.
Yep. And there is backlash that has happened after this event. Ric Flair lost a commercial deal with CarShield, which
I don't
know how Ric Flair is going to be able to pay for his 14 child support payments that he has.
Yeah, I'm sure CarShield was the one hooking him up for that.
Exactly. But the big one is Tommy Dreamer.
Isn't that so weird?
Now.
Isn't it so weird? Well, actually, because there is actually more to the Flair side of these releases before we get to Tommy Dreamer, because we've had many discussions off the air about Tommy, and we'll get to them just in a second. But Rick, as a result, I don't know if you've kind of the update to this. Rick has sent out a statement denying it ever happened.
No, he sent out two statements.
Yes.
Two statements, because one was not good enough.
And then, but it was still vehemently denying that the action ever took place. And
right,
that wouldn't have been the road I would have taken, but it's probably, knowing our society, the road that's going to get him on appearances elsewhere. Unless what I think's going to happen happens, and we get another 10 or 15 women who come forward here in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
And knowing Ric Flair's history and, again, his sexual escapades, and for the man who has claimed that he has slept with 10,000 women, I'm sure some of those were non-consensual.
Very well. Well, we don't know for sure. This is all just hearsay and conjecture. I don't want to incriminate or indict Rick in any way until anything has been proven. So let's make it clear that this is just speculation on our part. But I would wager that if that is discovered, that Rick is going to have a really rough go of things going forward. But we'll see what happens to Rick. And also the WWE, they've revoked Plane Ride from Hell stories from their story time. They got rid of the entire Ric Flair themed episode of, I believe, story time it was. And now they've also removed him from the opening Tron, the signature to start the shows.
Right, they pulled all his merchandise, they pulled his page off the alumni page. They've basically done their best to Chris Benoit, Ric Flair right now.
Yeah, and I feel like that's so premature until more of this story develops, but that's the way WWE is. But what a slap in the face that's got to be to Rick, to have WWE just like completely turn their back at a moment's notice on just the one documentary. Was all it took.
But that also kind of means that WWE must know that there must be more to it.
Well, that's very possible.
Vince knowing that there's more to it.
Touche. I mean, I do have to give you, that's true, because it was Vince McMahon's settlement, after all, that was kind of the whole reason why Tommy Dreamer is in the heat he's in, which was the fact that she took the settlement. This young woman took the settlement, and, you know, her silence was bought, which is Vince McMahon's go-to when it comes to trouble. If Dark Side of the Ring, the series, has shown us anything, it's that Vince's go-to is buy-off.
Hey, take some money under the table. We don't speak about what happened.
Yep. That's Vince's go-to when it comes to this. It's been well documented. But some people seem to think, stupidly so, because that was definitely pressure from a higher level, and she had a shitty husband who blamed her for Rick's advancements, and she's had to live with this trauma, you know, and that the money doesn't really heal anything, and then you have to live with that guilt, which is what she was talking about. And then Tommy Dreamer says arguably the stupidest thing I've ever heard anybody say on camera.
Well, why don't you explain it?
So, Tommy Dreamer goes out, and I'm paraphrasing here, goes, well, maybe she shouldn't have taken the money if she was that upset. Maybe she should have tried him to the fullest extent of the law instead. And then, for whatever reason, decides that his next statement should go, well, this is one of those things where people will get offended by anything. It's just a joke. It's a gag. And then he points to his really shitty looking double ponytail, and he goes, so I'm sure somebody will be offended by this double ponytail. But that's just the way that our culture is now. And that was just not the time for that. And when I heard this, I was like, Tommy, you gotta be ribbing, right? This is a rib. But then I watched it again like 2 or 3 times, and you know that he's meant every goddamn word of that, and how it's just so cringy. How could you have that opinion with daughters?
Like, let me explain what. You were paraphrasing. Let me say Tommy Dreamer's exact words.
Oh God. Okay.
He's just flaunting, styling, and profiling like the Ric Flair stuff where everybody's going to laugh about it. Obviously, somebody took offense to it.
Obviously. So then he pretty much just proves her point and then makes a completely unnecessary point outside of these things. It's just, Tommy.
And let's continue, shall we? I feel this is trying to portray someone as a sexual predator, and it's not. It's a joke. It's a gag. And today, 1,000% inappropriate. My hairstyle is inappropriate right now, and I am somehow offending someone right now with my double ponytail. How dare I have 2 ponytails? And my answer is I'm 50 years old and I'm happy I have hair. If you're asking me, I've hung out with Ric Flair. I've never seen him try to force his will against somebody.
Okay, now, I want to make a point here as well, because it's worth noting that we're not calling Ric Flair a rapist, right? Because even the flight attendant admitted that in no way did she ever feel like Rick was trying to rape her. He was just being very sexually provocative, inappropriate. You know, it's sexual harassment, sexual misconduct would be the way it is. It's misconduct. But in no way is he trying to be an aggressor or rape anybody.
But the thing is that Tommy Dreamer tried to dismiss it by saying it's a joke, it's a gag. I'm sorry.
That's stupid.
20 years ago, as a joke, it's not funny, and it's not funny now.
No.
So let's be clear, okay? You cannot just dismiss it. And the whole thing of saying, oh, I'm not with Ric Flair, and I've never seen him try to sexually harass someone. Well, you're not with him 100% of the time, are you?
Right. And by the way, how often have Tommy Dreamer and Ric Flair been in the same place at the same time? It's just
not much.
Yeah, realistically in 2002, which is when Rick came in and Tommy was there, and that they were there then, and then probably
maybe a little
in
bit
TNA,
in the 2000s, and that's it.
Yeah, probably in the TNA Hardcore Justice thing when Flair and Tommy were both there, and that was probably it. I mean, so what kind of reference does Tommy Dreamer have other than, it doesn't seem like he's defending Ric Flair as much as he's more accusing this woman of besmirching the good name of Ric Flair. And if
that's how she felt, maybe she shouldn't have taken the payout and went to the fullest extent of the law to then put this heinous person in jail, my opinion.
You think that Tommy would have said things differently if he had seen her piece of this documentary first?
Do you think Tommy Dreamer would have felt differently if it was his daughter being sexually harassed by Ric Flair?
I would sure hope
the answer is yes.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
There's no excuse for having this shitty opinion, right? It's a shitty opinion to have. However, the kickback on Tommy Dreamer from other companies draws my ire. But please describe what has happened now.
Well, there's one specific company, and that's Impact, who Tommy Dreamer works for currently as a producer, who have indefinitely suspended him.
And it's not just that he was indefinitely suspended, of course. We had to hear the Tommy Dreamer's opinions do not represent Impact's core values, and as such, we are suspending interminably. And, okay, in no way am I saying, before I get into this, in no way am I saying that they're wrong for taking Tommy Dreamer off of television. They should. You cannot keep him on television now after comments like that on a show that is arguably much bigger than yours. No disputing that. Agreed?
Agreed.
However, the way that Impact went about this is so backwards, given Impact's history, specifically with the pushing under the rug that they did with the sexual misconduct allegations and investigations with Don Callis in 2020 and early 2021, where there were multiple clear evidence, and yet nobody got to see it because all of a sudden Impact just kind of pushed it away. AEW came along, and then all of a sudden everybody forgot about it. So they swept actual evidence and action of the vice president of their own company under the rug, but because Tommy Dreamer says something stupid about somebody who's not a part of your company, somewhere that has nothing to do with anything other than Tommy Dreamer's employed, you have to make yourselves look better by going, he doesn't represent our core values. Actually, he does. And you had no business suspending Tommy Dreamer that way. If you were going to do this and take him off television, then you do what you did with Don and say, we're very disturbed at the comments made by Tommy Dreamer on the most recent revelations of late. We are going to investigate this internally. For the meantime, Tommy Dreamer, and we will reveal our investigation, at a later date. In the meantime, Tommy is going to be, off of our television, or in some respect, take Tommy off television, but we're going to handle this situation and discipline subsequently based on our investigation. Then if you want to suspend him, you can. But this was knee-jerk. This was specifically to make yourselves look good and go, oh, look how good we are. We're getting rid of somebody, cancel, instead of actually doing what you would have done. A lesser action does not deserve a harsher punishment than actual action in your company. No excuses. You cannot have this both ways with this difference in severity of offense.
And the fact that the hypocrisy of Impact saying Tommy Dreamer is suspended because of the words he said on this episode, right, of a documentary. Mm-hmm. But they had Don Callis as the executive vice president of talent relations on Impact. And he currently no longer holds the position, but the fact that he had this power while he was being investigated for sexual harassment and sexual allegations against women, and there was clear evidence that he was guilty.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Let's be clear. There is clear evidence that he is guilty of the things that he did.
Yeah.
It's just that, the legal system in America sucks sometimes.
It's how it is. And I'm probably going to assume that it's going to be the same with Rick, just knowing, it's Ric Flair. Is that going to change the way people view Rick? Absolutely. I kind of, it may not be to the level of severity, but I feel like this is going to be a publicity blow, not too different from the Hogan tapes.
What I'm curious about is what happens with AEW. Because his daughter is in WWE right now. And we've been talking about how maybe she would go to AEW. Well, now AEW, do they want the Flair family in their company? Do they want that name associated with them? If Ric Flair is accused of the things that we are speculating he may be accused of?
I don't think that heat will fall on Charlotte. Because I thought about that too. I understand your point. I totally understand what you're saying. Because it's very possible Flair, here's the relation. However, they did that ESPN 30 for 30 documentary, which Rick cringily quoted about the introspection into his life, where pretty much every member of Rick's family knows Rick and what Rick does. So I'm sure none of them are even surprised that this is a fact. Nor do I think that any of them would condone or be off. They would probably all side along the sides of, well, he probably had this coming. I love my dad, but he probably had this coming. So I don't think in that respect, Charlotte will get any heat if she does go to AEW, because they haven't officially picked up Rick. And if they had, that would have been a different story. But if it's just Charlotte, I don't think that falls on her.
But then that probably means that Rick is never officially going to come to AEW, because if he does, fans are going to shit on AEW by saying, why are you bringing this man in?
Yeah. Especially after they've banned Hulk and Linda Hogan.
Right,
but
it'll go back to the hypocrisy of Impact.
But
so you are saying that you don't want Hulk Hogan, who's never going to show up on AEW. Okay, let's be clear.
No, but
you are perfectly happy bringing in Ric Flair.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you can now. But here's my counterpoint. It's not like AEW has not brought the subject of a dark side of the ring in to compete before. Must I remind us all that Nicholas Gageathon was on AEW programming against Chris Jericho, wrestling his garbage match, a couple weeks after his show debuted?
Professional wrestling.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Ric Flair going forward. To me, Tommy Dreamer's done. Stick a fork in him. That's the last we see of Tommy Dreamer outside of a barnyard. But with Rick, there's much more to this story coming. Without a doubt.
True.
Much more to this story coming.
But I'm tired of listening to this garbage wrestling stories and these garbage wrestling stuff. Why do you have to bring up the Nick Gage stuff again?
John, sadly, it's just, blame AEW. We're just the messengers. Blame AEW for putting them on their programming.
But instead, let's listen to some good wrestling content.
Well, it's going to be wrestling content. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for ACPW. We are on episode, I believe this is 13 or 14. I did kind of push this together because I wanted to get it done before, chances are I will end up having to take next week off, which, by the way, quick piece of announcements, very quickly roll the intro. I believe next week, this Sunday, is our pay-per-view, is it not? WWE.
What pay-per-view?
WWE's pay-per-view.
Don't say the name of it. Don't say the name of it.
I won't. But if you want to hear a review of said pay-per-view, you will be able to listen to it on this show and the Totally Awesome podcast. We're going to do a simulcast. The audio is going to sound remarkably similar, but we are going to have that here for you. I'm going to try and get notes in. It will probably just be Joshua and Sky, but it is going to be a great time. My first official absence from the CMP, but that's what's coming up. That's next week. But I wanted to get this in before we did that.
Right, because Extreme Rules.
You told me not to say it, and then you said it. Well, it's not going to be extreme, folks. Welcome to Extreme Rules, where it's not going to be extreme and there are no rules.
God.
So
I didn't cover it in the news segment, but Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair during a segment on Raw had nearly 1,500 people leave the stadium or arena during their segment. What's going to happen during the pay-per-view?
They're going to have to figure it out eventually. There's a wake-up call coming somewhere. I bet you there's a wake-up call coming somewhere. And it might be on this pay-per-view.
Well, hopefully you can use Alexa Bliss better and she can actually be productive.
Well, let's just get into this, shall we? It is ACPW,
that does not bode well, folks. It does not bode well.
It's episode 14. I will admit this is the first of 3 weeks of build. leading up to our December show, Winter Warfare, which we are working on. We have not officially gotten it, but we are working on getting it either in Philadelphia, Boston, or potentially the Big Apple itself. So stay tuned. Location.
It just depends on which one will allow this Outlaw Mud Show to perform there.
Well, it's more how many seats do we actually practically think we can sell, and how big an arena can we actually get people to come to? Because this is a territory. I said it from the start. It is a territory. So
right, like I run a territory, you run a territory, and Joshua runs a shack.
runs the oh, what was her name? I think Lucy, the little psychiatrist shack for a nickel from Peanuts. And he goes there and you tell him his problems. And then he removes the football from you and then has Nick Gage on his program and makes Santino Marella an actual person. So, by the way, if you want to know what the hell we're making fun of, please listen to South Carolina Championship Grassling. It's a grassroots promotion. God damn it.
They wrestle grass. They wrestle on the grass.
Oh, man. He's never going to let me live that down. The South Carolina Championship Grappling, a grassroots organization out of South Carolina. Listen to the TAP on TAW Gaming's channel. It's on there every couple of weeks. It's their response to our fantastic fantasy booking. Let's get into it, shall we?
Let's get into it.
All right. I will go as quickly as I can. We got 15 segments here. And
what?
Yeah, that's right. 15 segments, that's 7 matches and 8 segments. That's how these shows run.
Okay. I was about to say, you're going to have 15 segments. How many matches are you going to have?
No, 15 segments combined. Full format.
Okay, good. Okay. Just want to be sure.
Yeah, segments include matches.
I don't want to be here for a 4-hour show.
No. This is not an regular AEW programming. We begin with the Briscoes taking on Private Party. And
well, this is going to be short.
It is. It's only 6 minutes, and the Briscoes do a little referee distraction, and they win with a top rope senton.
Fair enough.
Nice and easy.
Fair enough.
Then we go to Matt Striker and Taz, and he said we're going on to the next match. Shall we review the bracket of our Women's Championship Tournament? We've got
it's bracket season, folks. That's
right. We've got two matches here tonight, 2 first-round matches. We have already seen from last week, depending on which unit of measurement you'd like to use. We saw Camille beat Ashley Vox to advance to the semifinals. And we also saw Britt Baker beat Carmella to advance to the second round. But, of course, we also saw the Briscoes jump Roddy and Adam Cole, and Britt Baker having her ankle, it seems, incapacitated. And, by the way, we do not have an update on her condition other than it looks like, based on what they've done with the x-rays and what they've gone through, if she will not be cleared in time to compete in the semifinals. So, unfortunately, that space will be left blank as it stands. So,
and perhaps in the future, either a new contender will be made or somebody's getting a bye.
Yes, we will see what happens, and we will find out that match later tonight. That match will be Zelina Vega versus Mickie James. The winner of that will advance to that semifinal spot. And then we also have the next match, which is Allison Kay versus Alexa Bliss, and the winner of that will face Camille. However, unfortunately, my name is Matt Striker, and it is my duty to tell you that real-life circumstances, unfortunately, I shouldn't say real-life circumstances, but the circumstances of the world at this time are not necessarily free of what happens here at ACPW, and Alexa Bliss is on our COVID list. And unfortunately, she is going to be off the programming for the next 2 weeks. There was nothing we could do about this, but of course, for the safety of all of our wrestlers, we want to make, and for Alexa herself, we wish her the best in these next 2 weeks. We will see her when she comes back.
So apparently the demon is not strong enough to beat COVID.
Because, well, not even the demon can beat COVID-19, ladies and gentlemen. And no amount of dolls were going to stop that. But there is a replacement for Allison Kay. Allison Kay comes down to the ring and awaits the person coming down. And it is shakily dakily Katie Forbes.
You son of a bitch, you did not.
I did. But it'll be painless. It'll be painless, Sky. It only goes 3 minutes. Allison Kay beats the absolute piss out of her in short order and hits a big power bomb, and Allison Kay gets the win. Nice and easy. Katie Forbes gets a shot. She's really not a wrestler. This kind of just proved that she's not in Allison Kay's league. And so...
she's barely a decent stripper.
So next week, we will have Camille versus Allison Kay in a semifinal matchup. That is what we have determined up to that point.
All right.
So, it all's well that ends well. That's the way I'd like to say. And
okay.
So now we move on, and it is JR in the ring with FTR, Randy Orton, Jeff Cobb, and everyone's favorite mouthpiece, Jim Cornette. And JR says, well, I am here with the cult of Cornette, and Jim, it's not going to lie to you, this has been kind of a tumultuous couple of weeks. And Jim Cornette says, Jim, you and I have been friends for a very long time, and I've never been able to lie to you, and obviously, you can tell I'm not in the brightest of moods, am I, Jim? You know why I'm not in the brightest of moods, Jim Ross? Because no matter what happens with the cult of Cornette, no matter how many times I have proven to the world, to the entirety of ACPW, that we are the most dominant, most formidable members of wrestling, period. No matter how many times Jeff Cobb has to be the fantastic specimen that he is and retain his heavyweight championship. No matter how many times I have proven that the greatest tag team in the world is FTR after a victory they had over Outlaw Inc. And I have Randy Orton. Even so, I still have to deal with this front office making sure that we are conspired against. There are injunctions that need to be filed, Jim Ross, because the upper tier of this place is after us. And I've never seen such an overt abuse of power like the way that Arn Anderson and the heads at ACPW, which, you know what happened, Jim, when the two bald men put their heads together? They made asses out of themselves. And every one of those ACPW members of that board must be bald because there's nothing but asses up there. And speaking of asses, I see quite a lot of baldies in this audience here. So let me make sure that for those of you who want to keep your hair, listen to my podcast, you'll get a discount because you need me, ACPW needs the cult of Cornette, and we will all prove once and for all, every time we set foot in this ring, we command this ring, we command ACPW, and nobody will ever take this belt away from the cult of Cornette. And why, Jim? Because this glorified Hawaiian lion, Jeff Cobb, has no one left to fight. He's beaten the biggest men time and time again. It's over for them. It's over for ACPW. Just accept the fact that no matter how much this company has it out to get us, we get everything we want. And who's going to stop us, Jim? You? And at that moment, out comes Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson comes up and, well, this is certainly unexpected. Our commissioner here has graced us with his presence. And so, Arn, why don't you come in and you know, what's on your mind? And Arn Anderson goes, Jim Cornette, I know I'm not the only person here who is tired of listening to you whine and moan and bitch about how unfairly you've been treated. Nobody has been treated better than the cult of Cornette in ACPW. Because you have been able to do anything you want, anywhere you want. And the only reason you're mad at me is that I let the boys who deservedly so want to get back and throttle your neck I don't stop him from doing that. I don't stop him from trying that. And the reason is because you deserve it. And speaking of things you deserved, Titus O'Neil, that man came to me at the end of Midsummer Showdown, and he asked me, he said, Arn, I got payback on Mr. Orton right behind you after you orchestrated a tar and feathering. Do you know it's 2021, Jim Cornette? You know that kind of thing has a lot more tones to it than you may have suspected? Nobody sat well with that. I didn't sit well with that. But did I do anything to you, Jim? Did I suspend you? Did I cancel you? No. I let you run roughshod like you have day in and day out. I could have done so much more as a commissioner. Perhaps I should do more as a commissioner. But I don't want to get in the way of men being men. And Titus O'Neil is a man, and his justice, his vengeance, he's still thirsty, Jim. And so tonight, in the main event, because justice is something you have not felt and not tasted yet, we're going to have a 6-man tag. And that 6-man tag is going to be FTR and Randy Orton going up against the 3-man team of Outlaw Inc., the men that you quote-unquote beat at Midsummer Showdown, and Titus O'Neil. And if their team wins, Jim, the number 1 contender to that man's World Heavyweight Championship will be the man whose justice and his eyes are burned with the fires of revenge. And that's Titus O'Neil. So you want me to be unfair to you, Jim? How's that? And of course, the cult of Cornette is, of course, exploding. They're upset. Mic drop by Arn Anderson. He walks off, and now we have our main event tonight. A huge 6-man tag match where if FTR and RKO, the cult of Cornette, lose, then Titus O'Neil will be the number 1 contender one last time for Jeff Cobb's ACPW Heavyweight Championship at Winter Warfare.
I want you to know that during that promo, I proceeded to get some popcorn and eat it.
Hell yeah, you did.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, okay? Let's break it down. First off, Jim Cornette did everything. He insulted the people. He insulted Jim Ross. He insulted Arn Anderson. Gave a plug for his podcast, which of course he did. And great job setting up his viewpoint about the conspiracy against him and the cult of Cornette.
Thank you, sir.
Arn Anderson doing something that I felt like he needed to do, and that was explain why he didn't punish them for the tar and feathering, which is a little bit of a racial undertone
you even
in the
mentioned
modern
that.
Day with Titus O'Neil.
Yeah. He even mentioned that. And I wanted to make sure that was addressed, right? That wasn't under the rug. Like, Jim, you understand what I could have done to you for that. And I held my tongue because I'm letting the boys be boys and I'm letting this, people fight on this fighting program.
Right. You also got a shot at Pact in there. I noticed that.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
But you set up a big 6-man tag with big stakes. Titus O'Neil is the one man who Jeff Cobb has run roughshod over everybody. But Titus O'Neil, he doesn't give up. He doesn't go away. And I like that you're making him work for it. You're not just giving it to him.
Right. And that's the thing is, not for nothing, he did fight and lose at Melee in Montreal. So it's not like he can just have a title match. That's not the way that ACPW works. That's you want it, you got it. I don't love doing, and I don't think I have done up to this point. I don't think.
No, you haven't. The people who have gotten where they are have gotten because they deserved it or they cheated.
Yep.
And we'll see what happens. Will Titus O'Neil get another shot? Because he is the one man who may be able to beat Jeff Cobb.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with what we have now discovered with, it's not the next segment, but it's coming up. But with Brian Cage.
Oh, it's even more. Oh, well, yeah. Let's continue, shall we?
Yes. So then we have our second quarterfinal matchup It is Zelina Vega versus Mickie James. And here is the finish. This match, I wanted it to go longer, but it's early on the card, so I only gave it 6 minutes. The matchup, Mickie James is outclassing Zelina Vega in wrestling. Pretty much the entire matchup, right? Because, which is the way I think it would be received, because Mickie is obviously a much bigger name than Zelina Vega. She's got a lot more experience than Zelina. Not to take anything away from Zelina, because she's got enough in her own right, but Mickey's definitely got more name recognition on this, so it would make sense for Mickie to be more on top of Zelina, especially because Zelina's been on our program for 1.5 years and hasn't had a single wrestling match.
Also, we're talking about size difference here.
Yeah, so Zelina's getting outclassed, and as Zelina's getting outclassed and Mickie James looks like she's about to bring it home, Andrade comes down the ramp, no music, comes down the ramp, he did not come out at first, which was suspicious, and they wondered, where is he? So he came up to start arguing with the referee because they're saying this is so the referee looks just ever so slightly, and then out of her outfit, in her chestal section, Zelina pulls out a little spray bottle of something, perfume or something like that.
Mace.
Yeah, mace or something like that. We'll call it the mace. Sprays Mickie James in the face and hits Andrade's hammerlock DDT and gets a cheating victory.
Okay. First off, that's a great way for a woman to cheat, because you have to cheat within your character, and a woman pulling something out of her chestal region and using mace is it's a female thing to do.
Yes.
I wonder if you could tease a mixed tag match between Mickie James and a certain husband of hers versus Andrade and Zelina down the line. Maybe in the future. I'm not sure, but you could do it.
There are ad drops coming next month, Sky. For what it's worth.
Wait, not judge.
That's right. We're getting our Q3. That's also just a fun little tidbit. We are doing, in October, we are doing our 4 ads, 4 drops, our third quarter ad drop period. So we'll be able to do that and work with them for the 2 weeks that we have them before the season's over.
And TAW Gaming is also allowed to do ads and drops when they do their show at CCG.
Yes. But his schedule can be different.
All 3 of us, but here's the thing, all 3 of us are going to be fighting for a certain guy from Chicago.
We might. We just might. And so let's keep going here. So then we get Tony Schiavone in the back, and Tony Schiavone is in the back with Trevor Mann. And Trevor Mann does not have a match tonight, but he's ladies and gentlemen, back with Trevor Mann. And Trevor, this is it's certainly been a very interesting road you've been down over the past several weeks. Having Paul Heyman's, of course, influence on you and rejecting that, and so you don't have a match tonight, but we're heading towards Winter Warfare, and we're heading towards one of our biggest main events. What are your plans here going into ACPW? Well, the last thing I want, Tony, is to be somebody who's just stuck in no man's land. With nobody to fight, nobody to be around, just somebody who's there. Because I've spent my career doing things extraordinary. I've been doing things beyond just the inside of the ring. I've gone above and beyond. I've bounced back and forth. I've made enough puns. You already know what I've done. But what I plan to do is far more important than any mask I've worn, than any trunks I've worn, and than any single name that anyone who doesn't know how to name people could give me. Trevor Mann does what Trevor Mann has to do, and he will not be worried about finding an opponent, because when the time comes along, when the right guy shows up, when the going gets tough, Trevor Mann, man's up. Oh, I love when you say that. And in walks Paul Heyman. Trevor. Oh, that was beautiful. Oh, that's such a great catchphrase. I know you've gotten flack for that catchphrase by more than one person. Specifically one person, but more than one person. But I want you to know, Trevor, I've always been a fan of not just your work, but your catchphrases, everything about you. And you say that the right person's going to come along to face. Well, you have a lot of obstacles that you have to face over your career. I've mentioned it to you before. But you want somebody to face. You want an opponent. Well, let me make something very clear to you, Trevor, man. You see, people compare me to a walrus, but I am much more an elephant. To where I may thwomp around, a little heavier set than the rest of you, but I never forget those who turn me down and who do me wrong. And I so happen to have a client. You may know his name, Brock Lesnar. And Brock Lesnar is going to be fighting someone at Winter Warfare, but he needs an opening match. And do you know who he's chosen as his opening match, Trevor Man? It's you. So I hope Trevor Man mans up, because he'll have to be more than a man when he faces the Beast next week.
Trevor Man's gonna die.
He very well
Trevor
might.
Man's gonna die.
He very well might. So now we know in Brock Lesnar's very first matchup next week, we are getting Brock Lesnar versus Trevor Man. It's going to go longer than 90 seconds, folks. I will give
It
you
may
that.
not go much longer than that.
But it may not go much longer than that. But it's going to go longer than 90 seconds. You'll get more out of it than Saudi Arabia did. I'll put it that way.
You would think it would be a more underwhelming matchup given the people that are involved, but given Paul Heyman's motivations and how he does not want his image to be besmirched,
Yes.
it makes sense.
Yeah, and also kind of the mention of that Brock's going to be fighting someone bigger at Winter Warfare, kind of alluding to Brian Cage, but not giving Cage the satisfaction of mentioning his name, while devaluing Trevor Mann's size and stature at the same time.
Exactly. I mean, when it comes down to it, don't put my name in your mouth, because that's such a big thing nowadays.
That's right, apparently. And we'll get to that. Believe me, we will get to that. Next up, we have a singles match. And this one is, I think, going to be interesting with to hear, because this is the very first. I've had this man on my roster the entire time. This is the first singles match he has ever had. It is Tommaso Ciampa going one-on-one with Darby Allin.
Speaking of matches that are not going to be long,
Yeah, it's 5 minutes. Project Ciampa, that big lung blower thingy, that powerbomb lung blower, which looks freaking awesome. That's his finish. And that's a 1, 2, 3. And then in comes JR and says, well, Tommaso Ciampa, congratulations on your very first singles win. You know, you've been here for such a long time, but, you know, the world is wondering, have you heard from Johnny Gargano? Tommaso Ciampa says, JR, I don't mean to make this sound like anything I'm about to say is coming off on you. I really like you, Jim, but I'm really pissed off right now, because there was one thing that I ever wanted in pro wrestling, and that was not only to be the very best like no one ever was, but that was to also be the best with a man I trusted, with a man I believed in, and I could have been that. And we had our struggles lately. There's no doubt about that. We had been on a pretty nasty losing streak. But Johnny, you had no business leaving at matchup. You had no business blaming me when you were the one at fault 9/10 of the time for the reasons that we lost. Every match, it was on you, not me. And you had no daring balls to come at me and to leave me alone to the wolves. And so if you got the guts, because you proved yourself to be yellow, damn, I'm yellow. That's what DIY must have stood for to you, because you proved yourself to be a coward. Next week, in the ring, you and me, you prove yourself to be worth a damn. If you've got the guts, then fight me like a man. And if you're not, Well, then, maybe you're just a kid, just like the way you look.
Are you sure Jim Cornette did not write this promo?
No?
It sounds like something he would make Tommaso Ciampa say.
Well,
but it's a great promo. It's a match that we've seen before, but they always knock it out of the park, especially when they have something to fight for. And it's one of those fights that very rarely you could say, I could watch them fight forever. There's a very small group of wrestlers that I could say, just put those two up against each other and they'll make money no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's those two.
Yeah. And you know what's wild is that, sadly, this is like in my lower mid card. And I'm having this match just because of the way that I booked DIY up to this point. But I wanted Tommaso Ciampa to get something fired up, a babyface promo of why he's mad, why Johnny had no right doing what he had to do, and that Johnny proved himself, damn, I'm yellow. This is proved to be, so now if you've got any guts, come fight me like a man. Basic promo, but one that fits the situation.
Right. Plus, eventually, it's one of those things with our companies and something with long-term storytelling. When I first did Kevin Owens and Edge, that was a mid-card matchup because it wasn't developed at the time.
Right.
But I took the time, I developed both characters, and eventually it became a main event title. What's to say that this thing can't happen with Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano?
Yeah, you never know.
That's the beauty of long-term wrestling and guys who wrestle over and over again. The circumstances changes. Maybe they move up the card next time.
Yeah, no, you
It
never
could be
know.
a number one contender, or maybe even a world title match.
That's right. So you never know where this is going to head, but we've got a big match to add to next week's card, which is Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano one-on-one.
If Johnny Gargano has the gut.
That's right. If he has any wherewithal to show up, then he will show up. Next up, Tony Schiavone's in the back, and he's got everybody's favorite Rhodes. It is Cody and Shakely Deckly Katie Forbes, who, in the interest of fairness, has got an ice pack. She's still shaking her ass.
She's shaking, but every time she has to stop because it hurts the shake.
Yeah, she's shaking her ass, but like she's still kind of hurt. She's still selling the injury, you know, the fact that Allison Kay beat the literal teetotal shit out of her earlier in the night. And Tony Schiavone goes, "Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Schiavone, and I'm standing here as your announcer here in the back with Cody Rhodes." And before he's able to finish, he goes, "Say what I told you to say." And Tony Schiavone says, "I'm here with the American Dream, wrestling's royalty, Cody Rhodes." And Cody looks off, you know, all proud of himself. And Katie Forbes. Cody, of course, you gained the victory, although albeit under nefarious circumstances at Midsummer Showdown. What do you feel now that Dustin, you know, we've heard whispers throughout the week, and of course we've seen Dustin's activity on social media that in no way is he done with you and coming to get you. What are your feelings now, knowing that this is not over between you and your brother? You're asking me, peasant, if I, royalty, care about my brother, also a peasant, wanting to come and fight me. Good luck entering my castle, Dustin. The fact is, you can't touch me. And the reason you can't touch me is that nobody can touch me. Because I am on a level so far above wrestling's average, wrestling's mediocre, wrestling's gold standard. It's a little dusty in here, isn't it? Maybe you want to clean this up for royalty. Because I've not only lived up to the name, the American Dream, something that everyone can aspire to, I've surpassed anyone who's ever held the name Rhodes. Because you must hold the Rhodes name in respect. You must hold the Rhodes name with regard. And with this lovely lady by my side, you don't need to do it, honey. You just rest up. You rest up. Oh, sorry. Was that your bad cheek? Okay, let me slap the other one then. Slap.
Oh, God.
This lady and I here, we're living fast, we're living large, and we're living as the king and queen of ACPW, and nobody, Dustin included, is going to stop us from doing what we're doing. See, to me, it's back to business. It's back to getting to what I know I'm destined to be, and that's a champion. And make no mistake, I know that Titus O'Neil has got everything going, but I'm there, and I'm watching, and I'm ready. And Dustin, you may try time and again to prove that you're anything other than a black raindrop. But the raindrops don't fall on my head when the sun's always shining on my face. And you best remember that, Tony. We're here, and every time you don't kneel before me, somebody else is willing to take your place.
Oh, sorry, I was napping. That promo was so boring.
It's Cody.
It's Cody. Cody just goes on and he just talks about these eloquent stuff. But really, when you look down at the words, he's just saying a bunch of nothing.
Yeah, because he's shallow. He's so incredibly shallow. And that's his whole thing. You know, he's built himself up a bubble around himself to where he genuinely thinks that he's got a god complex. And avoiding Dustin obviously did not bring him anywhere down the size. It's only inflated his ego even more, to the point where he thinks that Dustin, his own brother, is just a measly peasant.
Right, and that's the thing, though, is that would a guy like Dusty Rhodes ever approve that kind of behavior from his son? Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not.
And now he's even saying that he surpassed Dusty. He surpassed everyone in the Rhodes family. That he is now the American dream to aspire to. And if you recall the sit down with Dustin Rhodes, he called Cody out on doing exactly this.
But he lost. He lost.
But
and because he lost, he can't say anything. At least that's what Cody would say. Even though he lost under dubious circumstances.
Yeah, of course, that. For those of you who missed that, Dustin went to go for a punch and Cody sold it. He didn't actually get punched, but Cody leapt over the top rope like he had gotten hit. The referee only saw it from one angle, so it was a top rope disqualification because he didn't see that Dustin didn't actually throw the punch, and Cody got out of dodge before any of the outcomes could be changed. And this isn't AEW where all of a sudden a referee's going to call it out randomly. So
right. So we'll see what happens, but this is not going to end short. This is going to continue.
This is Cody being Cody. And that's no fun for anybody. Now, up next, we have a debut. It is Eli Drake going one-on-one with everyone's favorite artist. It is Kenny Omega.
Fuck off, artist.
It is a 3-minute match. And Eli Drake wins with what he called the gravy train. I don't have a good name for this, but it's an easy dub. So he wins with the easy dub.
Oh, what's the finishing move?
So it's basically, he takes him up. How do I even describe it? He lifts him up, not like, almost like an Alabama slam, but not like with his legs in his not with his head in his crotch. It's like almost towards the side. He's got his arm, like his head around his arm, and then he like lifts him back, and it's like I can't even describe it. You gotta just look it up. It's called the gravy train.
That's a bad name for a finisher.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bad name for a finisher. It's a working title, but right now he wins with the easy dub because Eli Drake ED. There you go.
It's not a better name, but it's not a great name, but it's a better name than what we had.
Yeah, better than nothing. So then JR gets into the ring and goes, well, Eli Drake, this has been this has been quite a night for ACPW. We've been getting singles debuts and premiering talent, and you're no exception here. And what a tremendous first wing here, Eli. So what is your take here going into ACPW, and what can we expect from Eli Drake? I'm going to make this short and sweet, Jim, because you've heard a lot of long-winded people talk on this program already. ACPW is the place where men and women who are the toughest, who are the fiercest, compete for the greatest prize in professional wrestling. And it was no surprise, Jim, that I hopped on this bandwagon, because this place needed a man like Eli Drake. And I only do things big. And so I'm going big and calling somebody big out. Randy Orton. You've made quite a name for yourself over the course of many, many years. But the fact of the matter is, you've been forced into doing the same thing time and time again. And the world needs revision. And there's no better revisionist than Eli Drake. So Orton, I challenge you. I'll even let you name where and when, but I'm going for the bounty hunter. Can the bounty hunter avoid getting hunted? You'll find out, but there's no reason that you'll ever see. But soon enough, the world will see why you've got to rely on Eli Drake.
Big words, Drake. Let's see if you can back it up.
So a good win against a nothing personality like Kenny Omega, but this might be the first ever I'm calling someone out promo I've ever done.
No, you've had people call each other out, but no one's called out Randy Orton because you do not call out the Legend Killer.
Yeah, nobody just straight up, though, like with no association to. You know what I mean? Usually it's been in casual promos, like I've mentioned this person, and then that person would happen to interact, where this has been more like, I'm making a statement, I'm calling up somebody big, and I'm challenging somebody big. That I haven't really done before, but I want to get Eli Drake very firmly secured into this mid-card, and a match against Randy Orton is exactly the way to do that.
It's a good way to do it. Let's see what happens.
So, when that match is going to happen, we're not sure yet. It's not going to be next week. That's for sure, but the challenge has been laid. Now, we go back to Tony Schiavone. Tony Schiavone is in the back with wrestling's finest, the ACPW Tag Team Champions. And Tony goes, well, Bobby and Kyle and I guess now Roddy, first of all, it pains me to say this, but congratulations on your victory at ACPW's Midsummer Showdown. Congratulations on the ACPW Tag Team Championships. And before Tony can really continue, Kyle O'Reilly brings Tony's mic toward him and goes, I told you so. Bobby told you so. We all told you so. The Hardys didn't have it in them. This has been a fluke. They chased those titles for how long? A year and a half? Chased those titles for forever. And what came out of it? They won the belts, and then they fought a real team and they lost. Big surprise. The real matter of the fact is that the Hardys can't keep up with ACPW. They're not at our speed. They're not at ACPW speed. No matter what age it is, we're not even talking about age anymore. Just look at the state of the Hardys. Look at what they've done. Look at what they've gone through. They don't have any victorious roads anymore. We've seen what happens when they go down the victory road. Am I right? Oh, absolutely.
Oh, whoa, no.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
You did not mention that.
We've seen what happens. We know these guys have been washed up for the better part of 10 years. And because they get lucky one night, doesn't mean that they belonged here. It doesn't mean that they're represented here. And it doesn't mean that ACPW is a good fit. Whereas wrestling's finest, the men with all the gold, Roderick Strong, pound for pound, the toughest wrestler on this group. No offense, Bobby, and of course, no offense myself. You got the technical mastermind, me, the technician, and of course, the all-around, the psychologist, the big man, Bobby Fish. The three of us, we knew from the start, no matter what kind of pussy like Adam Cole, who isn't here tonight because he's taking care of his girl. He's not here tonight. You know why? Because he thought he could get away with being a new Adam Cole. Why break what isn't broken? Why fix what isn't broken? Wrestling's finest was never broken. We just had somebody at the helm who didn't know what it took to lead. Well, the three of us don't need a leader because, well, doesn't the gold speak for itself? Come on, guys.
You did not mention Victory Road.
That was a bit of a low blow.
A bit of a low blow. It's a dark period in wrestling.
Yeah, it is. And are you surprised, though, given wrestling's finest's attitudes towards people like Adam Cole, that they would go to that level?
No. This doesn't surprise me that they would mention that. It's just, this is the type of promo I've been waiting for from wrestling's finest. And I've enjoyed it. They are a fearsome three-man group. And what's Adam Cole going to do?
Is Adam Cole going to do anything?
What's he going to do?
You know, it's going to be hard to tell because, you know, right now, at least from what we saw, his mind is almost exclusively on Britt Baker. So will he interact? You know, it's very interesting. It's obviously the story is not at its complete conclusion, but you don't know where it's going to lead next. But speaking of things,
we'll find out.
That's right. Speaking of things that we don't know where it's going to lead next, we have a match that, ironically enough, Andrade got kicked off of both mine and AEW's pay-per-views because of runtime, or because Pac couldn't get into the country. And so, as a result, we have this match on this show rather than on Midsummer Showdown, but it's something we hyped up 2 weeks prior. It is Andrade, Cien Almas, with Zelina Vega, who is all happy and proud of her champion, or her victory in the tournament, against everyone's favorite Irishman, Finn Balor. The last time these two wrestled,
an interesting match.
The last time these two wrestled, they went to a draw. This time, when they wrestle, this match goes 12 minutes. And this one was kind of tough as a finish, and we'll see where I go with this, if, you know, as far as this goes, but Finn Balor goes to make his comeback. He's getting some momentum. He gets Andrade down. He goes up to the top rope for the coup de grace. And at that moment, because Andrade starts selling his eye to the referee, so the referee starts kind of coming down a little bit close, starts focusing on that. As he does that, Zelina just trips the leg of Finn Balor, so he split legs the turnbuckle. And he falls forward, and as he falls forward, he falls forward down. Andrade grabs him, pulls him out from the edge of the turnbuckle, hits his own hammerlock DDT. 1, 2, 3.
It's a good heel finish, but boo those two. Boo.
Yeah.
Boo.
To pull the same thing with a hammerlock DDT finish in 2 separate matches, these two are pulling some shenanigans.
But I mean, they're too interconnected, so I mean, it works.
Yeah, and I don't think this hurts Balor any either. You know, because it is a fuck finish.
Like, it's not two or three people doing the same finishing move on the same show with no connection to each other, involving a frog splash from a dead Mexican wrestler. I forget who I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, we won't mention his name, please. Michael Cole does it enough as it is.
And Michael Cole is not on this show and will never be on this show.
No, Adam Cole is on this show. Michael Cole is not. But anyway, so Andrade gets the win here. I want to keep his momentum going. I really don't want to take his heat away from him yet, because he hasn't done enough. So
there's more to come with Andrade Cien Almas, and again, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt at all for Finn Balor.
No,
he can come back from this.
Exactly. So then we get back out of the ring, and then we come back into the ring, and JR, because they've had some time off, so they're getting their reps in tonight. JR is I am here in the ring, and out comes Dustin Rhodes. And Dustin comes out And JR goes, well, Dustin, we heard from Cody earlier, and, you know, you and I both know Cody. We've been around him for many years. Obviously, there's a lot more going on between the two of you. What are your thoughts now, especially after the way that the Midsummer Showdown match ended? And Dustin goes, Jim, there's a lot of things I want to say right here, right now. And I'll say a few of them right here, right now, but I've got more to say than this show's going to allow. And I'm not going to say it, as I mentioned many times before. I don't bring personal lives into this business, Jim, but Cody has forced my hand. And so, Cody, I hope you're feeling pretty good about yourself. I hope you're feeling better than you've ever felt about your entire existence. Wins, losses, doesn't really matter to me. Because you and I both know what you did at Midsummer Showdown. And you're going to be the one who has to sleep at night knowing that you did it. But next week, I'm not playing anymore. Next week, I'm not dancing around, beating around the bush, waiting for you to get in front of me so we could talk this out. I didn't want to tell the world. I wanted you and I to just sit down and fix it. But you didn't want that. So now, next week, you and I, face to face, the world finds out exactly what you've been up to. We talk, middle of the ring, next week. And I know that your heart right now is filled with fear. Deep down in the cockles of your heart, Cody, you're afraid of many things, the least of which is me. So why don't you talk with your brother for one night? Because the world's going to find out what you did and what I plan to do about it.
What is he possibly teasing? It's getting interesting, folks. This is getting very interesting.
Well, I think we're going to find it out. You know, we've been, ever since Dustin was drafted, and Adam Page even, you got to add him into who's going to be on the show actually next. His match is next. Ever since that has happened, and we've seen Shakely, Dakely, Katie Forbes, there has been a tease of a story. I think we're going to find out a good chunk of that story next week.
I'm sure we will.
And Dustin, this is a very much a Dustin promo. You know, it's getting kind of to the meat and potatoes of the matter, but you could kind of see Dustin not wanting to air out the dirty laundry, but he has no choice.
Well, he's not like that. He's not of that personal style of doing the things that other people do. He's above it, but he feels like he has to address it. And address it, he will. That's
right. So stay tuned for that next week. That's pretty big. Next week is rounding out to be a pretty decent show with two semifinal matches.
By your standards.
That's right. We got two semifinal matches. We got Ciampa and Gargano. We've got all sorts of deals. We got Brock Lesnar and Trevor Mann, and we got a face-to-face with Dustin and Cody Rhodes, amongst other things. Up next.
Amongst other things that will be happening.
That's right. Up next, it is Adam Page versus Shorty G. This match goes 15 minutes, and it's a pretty hard-fought match. Adam Page, you know, he's a little rough and tough, but Shorty G kind of getting the better of him for the most part. And then Adam Page starts to make a comeback. Is starting to get the better on Shorty G. He doesn't really know how to handle it. Adam Page, he gets ready. He lines up the buckshot lariat. Shorty G comes up. Adam Page does the flip and lands it. And the second that his arm connects with Shorty G, you hear the bell.
Time. Oh.
It's a draw. And I'm not going to have anything happen post-match. And the reason is we've got 2 more weeks of build. I'm not blowing the wad and hot-shotting all of my secrets and playing all my cards all at once.
But you can just tell from the way that the match ended, they're both disappointed. They're both angry about the fact that they got a draw.
Yes.
Because what's even worse than losing is drawing. Because there's the chance that you almost won.
Yeah, and Adam Page was like right there. He was a split. He was not 5 seconds too late. And that's all it was.
You could say that Shorty G was ding ding, Saved by the Bell.
Oh, jeez. Oh, man. Thank God it is time to move on. Oh, no, we are not on to our main event. We got one more thing to do. And this one, now you already know a little bit about this one, Sky, but it's happening here. So we go back to Matt Striker and Taz, and then we have JR in the ring. And his interview is with MJF. And JR goes, well, Max, you have had a hell of a 2021. I mean, from everything that you've gone through, the feud with Shorty G, you know, what a great victory that was, all your feuds with Cody, and now here you are, arguably one of the hottest talked about names in ACPW, a true superstar wrestler you are, MJF. We've got a lot going on here in ACPW. You've just beaten Shorty G. Where are you standing now? And MJF takes the mic from, well, not fully takes the mic from JR, but, you know, he gives the mic and goes, Jim, I've had a remarkable 2021, but, you know, it's funny because a lot of people, even though I've tried to act a little bit more on my best behavior, a lot of people seem to not like me still. And I understand it. I do understand it. But you mentioned something about my name. You mentioned something about the fact that people are talking about me. And it just so happens that a couple of nights ago, I had somebody mention me I didn't think would ever put my name in their mouth. And I won't lie to you, Jim. I'm pretty pissed about it. Because there's this show on the West Coast that has a champion whose name is Roman Reigns. And Roman Reigns seems to think that he can come to a show like ACPW. He believes that he's better than this place, and he's coming over here. That's the word around the wrestling news sites and the dirt sheets that all of these people watch and read, and some of them are good, some of them aren't, but I know that to be a fact. And let me tell you something, Roman Reigns, you don't get the right to put my name in your mouth. You don't get the right to claim that you can just come over here and act like you're the hotshot here. To my knowledge, you're just a half-baked West Coast guy looking for another hit. You're not a man bred from the East Coast, from Long Island. You're not on the level of ACPW talent, because we've proven time and again that ACPW is the place to be, where the true champions dwell and where the true wrestlers prove themselves. And the fact that this man is arrogant enough with a whole posse around him to make him feel like he's not insecure, that everything's gonna come crashing down. You think you can hide the fact, Roman Reigns, that you are not the man you say you are, that you are truly a shell of the wrestler you think you are, just because you hide behind people. I dare you, I defy you, no, I beg you to come to ACPW and prove that you're worth a damn thing, because the way I see it, a half-baked, woven out of hemp championship belt that he's wearing around his waist is nothing compared to the gold standard that the people of ACPW, and namely the Long Island natives, have to offer. So Roman, I dare you to come and prove yourself. I dare you to step foot at ACPW, and you won't, because you know you'll be embarrassed, because I'm better than you, and you know it.
Those are fighting words. Those are fighting words.
That is the perfect response you possibly could have given, Sky.
Well, first off, thank you. But second, this is very interesting matchup that I have had. Like, Roman Reigns, he wants to make money. Yes. And he name dropped MJF because he feels like that would make him money. Because after all, he is the head of the table. He provides for his family.
Yes, and not for nothing, he is the NWL World Champion, who the show is framed pretty much entirely around, very rightfully so.
And when Roman made that promo, he was using the wrestlers of ACPW as a threat towards Kurt Angle. And MJF apparently has taken exception to that because he does not want to have his name haphazardly used. He is MJF. There is still a little bit of that cocky Long Island native in him.
Yes.
That wants people to respect him. And more importantly, he's not going to take someone using his name to get something else for granted.
Yeah.
He is going to want respect put on his name.
Yeah, and I don't think this is necessarily something that would make the ACPW crowd, at the very least, boo him for this. I think that the fact that he's not only defending himself, but in a way he's also putting over ACPW's talent and its toughness, and is also putting over the whole brand on top of that, makes this, as sharp as it is, still somewhat endearing of a promo.
Right. Now, let's be clear. Roman Reigns has a match with Drew McIntyre, so it's not like Roman is going to be focusing on MJF immediately.
Right.
But you never know if he has a response, because Roman, apparently he watches the other show, at least from what we have seen.
Right, that's established. So we will have to see whether Roman Reigns after MJF, of all people, calls out Roman Reigns. We'll see where this leads. So, we're almost done. We got a main event to do, and then it's over. And this main event is pretty huge. As if MJF calling out NWL's World Champion wasn't large enough. We have got a 6-man tag. You know what's so funny? You just had your entire Hart Foundation Cup of 6-man tags. And how do I end my show in the same month? 6-man tag. Let's go.
Not only that, but involving Jim Cornette's stable.
Get in there.
We are celebrating the life of Jim Cornette with 6-man tags.
That's right. Well,
just as he would have wanted.
So that's right. That's the way that Jim would want it. So here comes FTRKO. Because it's the one and only time I'm ever going to be able to say that
as their name.
That is going to be the one and only time I'm ever going to be able to use that. Give me a break.
Fine. FTRKO.
Going up against Titus O'Neil and Outlaw Inc. in our main event. Now, before this gets started...
The Titans of the Outlaw?
Yes,
the Outlaw Titans?
Outlaw Titans. And
we'll go with that.
That's right. So, we've got this 6-man tag, and Jeff Cobb and Jim Cornette are there at ringside. And before this match starts, we hear, wait a minute, stop it right here, right now. And Arn Anderson comes down, and you see him kind of waving like, hold off. And he comes down, and JR, who's obviously sitting down at ringside, goes up, Mr. Anderson. Goes, oh, no. This is not how this is going to work. Jim, your spot is with Matt and Taz. Jeff Cobb, your spot is in the back. This is a straight up 6-man tag. No one's interfering in this. Not on my watch. Not today. How's that for a power flex?
I don't imagine Arn Anderson saying the words power flex.
That's right.
God damn it.
So now Jim is obviously angry, but it's rules are rules. So begrudgingly, Jeff Cobb goes to the back and Jim whispers a little something, gives the last little pep talk to FTR and Randy Orton, because I said I was only going to say it once, and then goes off and joins the commentary booth, where he will be annoying but fantastic.
I'm sure he's not happy about it, and spends the whole time on the commentary bitching about Arn Anderson and all the rules and how his boys are still going to win.
He'll let us know about it. Well, this match goes 18. I didn't want to go too heavy. 18 is solid. I mean, for a show that had very small matches, with the exception of the draw up to this point, I think we can let this one run a little bit. And
fair.
So I'm not going to go through all the details of this. Obviously, it's going to be Eddie Kingston who gets the heat this time. When FTR, they do the blocking isolation, FTR and Randy Orton. You know, they go through all that. And then here's the finish, right? Titus makes the big comeback. Boom, boom, boom. Knocks down Orton. Knocks down Cash. Knocks down Hardwood. And, you know, it keeps going around like that. And then, you know, eventually Titus is looking for the clash of the Titus on Randy Orton and gets hit from behind. But then Outlaw Inc. comes in and kind of diverts. And Randy Orton, who was down because Titus O'Neil hit him with a whomping spine buster before he was able to do this, he sets up and he's going to go for the clash to the Titus, but then he thinks. He goes, no. Watch, and then he does like the fingers to the eyes, and he points at the commentary table and goes, hope you're watching, lifts Randy Orton up, and hits him with a deadlift power slam. Cover.
But isn't that...
1, 2, 3. Titus O'Neil is the number one contender. Message sent.
But isn't that the finisher of the world champion?
Sure is.
Oh, boy.
Sure is. And Titus O'Neil, you know, he gets big, and Titus O'Neil is looking, you know, he's celebrating, he's cheering with the crowd, but does not see that Jeff Cobb has come back into the ring area at the very end and comes in and clobbers him from behind, slings around, and hits an actual deadlift power slam of his own, which knocks Titus down. And Jim, you know, runs back in, skirts his little ass back into the ring, and Cobb and FTR and Orton are still selling, but they're still all behind him. And Jeff Cobb just holds the belt, and Cornette goes, "This, you know, you can hear him mouth, this ain't ever gonna change to you or to anybody here." Titus is down. And over his body is Jeff Cobb after a deadlift power slam, and that's the end of the show. But the fact remains that our main event of Winter Warfare will be Titus O'Neil versus Jeff Cobb for the ACPW Heavyweight Championship.
And there's a lot of potential for this match. You built up Titus O'Neil to be a very good babyface, but can he overcome all of the cult of Cornette to get the title?
Yeah, which is not something
we shall see.
Yeah, it's not something that anyone has been able to do up to this point. And it's also worth noting that this will be the third match that Jeff Cobb and Titus O'Neil have had. They had one before Jeff Cobb was bumping, which he only has ever done to Brian Cage and Titus O'Neil, where Titus O'Neil got closer, and then Brian Cage was eventually his first bump. Then the second match at Melee in Montreal, which he got screwed out of and then subsequently tarred and feathered, that he lost. And then now we get our final match, the big one, the real big one at Winter Warfare. It's going to be great to see. ACPW brings to you this show, and we will see you guys next week.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. There's a lot of interesting things that are going on in your show. And I know that my show was a big show and that this one was more of a setup, but you did good with a setup show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's the first of 3 steps getting us to our big spot. And of course, with the ad drops, that's going to be a big factor into this. It's an exciting time to follow fantasy booking here on the Court-Martail podcast. And what a show. What a show this has been.
What a show indeed.
And I thank you, Sky, for, as always, for being a part of these and listening to this out. Of course, it is now time to take our first commercial break. When we get back, you're going to hear Skylar and Josh Ageddon review Extreme Rules, where there's nothing extreme and there are no rules, 2021. And you will get to hear all of that on this show and as well as TAW Gaming. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe both here and there. And more to come. Along those lines, Skylar, thank you so much for being a part of this and a great show once again.
And thank you for having me. And next time, I am in the host chair with Josh again, and you're going to listen to some great stuff, even if it has to be about a mediocre pay-per-view.
Well, I know you guys will knock it out of the park, as you always do, and as you can always expect from the Court-Martail podcast. And until next time, thank you very much for listening and or watching, and we will be right back right after this.